In September 1938, an advertising agency submitted a memo to their client with one stated objective: to create a situation where almost every person pledging marriage feels compelled to acquire a diamond engagement ring. Not a product, a compulsion, engineered from scratch, targeting the most intimate decision a human being makes. The client was De Beers. The agency was N.W. Ayer and Son. And what they built together over the next 4 decades was not a marketing campaign. It was a psychological operating system, installed silently into the brain of an entire civilization. You are still running it today. Before 1938, fewer than 1 in 10 engagements in America involved a diamond at all. Brides wore rubies, sapphires, sometimes nothing but a plain gold band. The diamond was not a symbol of love. It was not a tradition. It was a rock sitting in a warehouse, losing value. One man decided to change that. Not through culture, not through art, through behavioral engineering. His name was Harry Oppenheimer. He was 29 years old, the son of the De Beers chairman, and he had inherited a problem that no amount of money could directly solve. He could control how many diamonds left the mines of Southern Africa. He could not control whether anyone wanted them. And by 1938, almost no one did. The Great Depression had collapsed luxury spending across the globe. Internal research commissioned by De Beers showed that since the end of the First World War, the total volume of diamonds sold in America had fallen by nearly half. Measured in real dollar value, the decline was closer to total collapse. A product with no industrial use, no nutritional value, and no functional purpose was watching its own demand evaporate. So Oppenheimer traveled from Johannesburg to New York. He sat down with Gerald Locke, president of N.W. Ayer and Son, and he made a request that was simple to state and almost impossible to execute. Change what a diamond means. Not the price, not the availability, the meaning itself. What followed was not advertising. It was the largest psychological heist in the history of consumer culture. And understanding exactly how they did it tells you something devastating about how your own desires are formed and who forms them. Here is the mechanism. N.W. Ayer's analysts understood something that most advertisers missed. You cannot sell a product by describing its features when the product has no useful features. A diamond cannot be eaten, worn for warmth, used as a tool, or invested like gold. It just sits there. What you can sell is the emotion it must represent. So the agency went to Hollywood. They placed giant diamonds on the hands of actresses at movie premieres. Women that millions of Americans watched, adored, and imitated. The photographs were then fed to entertainment columnists as unpaid editorial content. Not marked as advertising, just news. Just what the most glamorous women in America happened to be wearing. And then, in one of the least publicized and most insidious parts of the entire operation, N.W. Ayer arranged for lecturers to visit American high schools. They delivered talks to teenage girls about etiquette, about tradition, about what a proper engagement ring was supposed to look like. Think about the precision of that targeting. By the time a girl was old enough to be proposed to, she had already been programmed. Not by experience, not by culture, by a paid lecturer acting on a corporate brief. But that's not the worst part. There was a second problem the agency had to solve. When women were allowed to choose their own engagement rings, they picked smaller, cheaper stones. Rational shoppers made terrible customers. So the agency solved this by making the rational buyer disappear from the transaction entirely. They invented the surprise proposal, a scenario designed so the ring is chosen by the man alone. Emotional, anxious, with no price-conscious partner in the room to talk him down to something reasonable. A man standing in a jewelry store, terrified of appearing cheap in front of the most important woman in his life, is not a rational consumer. He is a psychological pressure system waiting to be detonated. Remove the rational buyer, detonate the emotional one, collect the margin. That single reframe, quietly seeded into etiquette columns and bridal magazines through the 1940s, is arguably the most profitable idea the cartel ever executed. But they still had a massive vulnerability, and it was the one threat that could have destroyed everything they built. The resale market. You see, diamonds are not rare. The earth is full of them. De Beers had spent decades enforcing artificial scarcity by controlling how many stones left the mines at any given time. But there was nothing they could do about the millions of diamonds that already existed in the world. Sitting in safe deposit boxes, inherited from grandmothers, recovered from divorces. If those stones ever flooded the open market, the price De Beers had spent decades protecting would collapse permanently. In 1947, a copywriter named Frances Garrity was working late at Ayer's Philadelphia office. She had joined the agency during a wartime labor shortage, one of the few women in a room full of men. She was assigned to write a tagline for De Beers. That night, she wrote 4 words on a slip of paper: "A diamond is forever." In 1999, Advertising Age would name it the single greatest advertising slogan of the 20th century. But forever was not chosen for its poetry. It was not chosen for its romance. What internal documents later revealed was that the line was engineered to solve a supply chain problem. If a diamond is genuinely forever, if it physically represents the permanence of your marriage, then selling it becomes something closer to betrayal than liquidating an asset. You don't sell what is forever. You keep it. You pass it down. You lock it in a vault. Frances Garrity, the woman who spent 25 years writing the emotional architecture of the American marriage proposal, never married. In 1982, investigative journalist Edward J. Epstein published a massive expose in The Atlantic titled, "Have You Ever Tried to Sell a Diamond?" Drawing on internal documents, he laid out the strategy in cold commercial language. The goal was to manufacture an emotional taboo around resale, not through law, not through force, through a 4-word sentence. A diamond is forever was never really about your marriage. It was a supply chain protection policy wearing the camouflage of romance. Here's where it gets interesting. Once the American market was saturated, De Beers went looking for new psychology to colonize. Japan had absolutely zero cultural precedent for diamond engagement rings before the 1960s. In Japanese tradition, marriage was formalized through different ceremonies and different symbols entirely. The diamond had no place in Japanese courtship. Through a sustained campaign linking diamonds to a Western, modern idea of success and targeting a generation of Japanese consumers who desperately wanted to signal global sophistication, De Beers changed that from scratch. In 1967, roughly 5% of Japanese brides received a diamond engagement ring. By 1981, that figure had climbed to 60%, an entire nation's most intimate cultural ritual, completely overwritten inside a single generation. But perhaps the most extraordinary move in the entire operation was what De Beers did when the Soviet Union entered the picture. In the early 1960s, Soviet geologists discovered one of the largest diamond deposits ever found. In Siberia, billions of stones, enough to flood the global market and permanently destroy the artificial scarcity De Beers had spent 80 years constructing. What happened next was kept secret for decades. De Beers struck a private agreement with the Soviet government. They would buy the Siberian stones directly through a subsidiary operation in London and distribute them slowly, carefully, through their own controlled channels. The Soviet Union, ideologically committed to dismantling capitalism, quietly agreed to protect a diamond cartel's pricing monopoly in exchange for hard Western currency. The agreement held for 30 years. One cartel, 2 superpowers, one shared interest in making sure you never found out how many diamonds actually existed. And when the Siberian stones turned out to be smaller than De Beers traditionally sold, did the cartel panic? No. They invented the Eternity Ring, a band covered in dozens of tiny diamonds. They didn't just describe the market. They moved to meet whatever the mines pulled out of the dirt next. So what does any of this have to do with you? The machine De Beers and N.W. Ayer built in 1938 is still running, not just in jewelry stores. Look at the lab-grown diamond. Today, a laboratory can produce a diamond that is chemically, physically, and optically identical to a mine stone. Identical. A gemologist cannot tell the difference with the naked eye. Specialized equipment is required. The lab-grown stone has the same hardness, the same clarity, the same light refraction. It is, by every scientific measure, a diamond. It costs 80% less. And De Beers, the company that spent 90 years manufacturing the illusion of scarcity, now spends millions of dollars on campaigns insisting that a lab-grown diamond lacks something called soul. You are watching them solve the same problem Oppenheimer walked into in 1938. Not through facts, because the facts are against them, through meaning. They are not selling you a stone. They are selling you the idea that authenticity cannot be manufactured. And the reason it works is the same reason the original campaign worked. You already believe it. You believed it before you walked into the store. The psychological machine De Beers built was never just about diamonds. It was a demonstration of a terrifying truth about human desire. If a corporation can control what a symbol means before you ever need to use it, they don't have to persuade you in the moment. The persuasion already happened. Years earlier, in a magazine, a movie, a school assembly you attended at 15 and never thought about again. By the time you're standing in a jewelry store, sweating over the price tag, you are not making a decision. You are executing a script that was written for you before you were born. Look at the other scripts currently running in your life. The size of the wedding you feel you need to throw. The brand on your wrist. The neighborhood you feel ashamed not to live in. Ask yourself, how many of those standards did you actually choose? And how many were simply waiting for you, fully formed, emotionally loaded, and attached to your sense of self-worth, the moment you felt vulnerable enough to need them? In September 1938, an advertising agency submitted a memo with one objective: to make an entire population feel compelled. They succeeded. The only question now is which compulsions you are still carrying and whether any of them were ever actually yours.